Schools have to open safely, but they have to open.
We want to be prepared for the most challenging situation.
You look at what's going on in the world, how can you not be in fear?
I was scared I wasn't going to have a senior year at all.
My responsibility as a teacher right now is to welcome my kids with open arms.
We're trying to make it feel as much normal as possible for our students.
But I also know that I have a job to do, and I am definitely going to do it.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for tonight's special town hall discussion. I'm Latricia Thomas.
And I'm Joshua. Tonight's show is all about back to school, a progress report on how it's going during this pandemic.
We've all gone through unexpected changes and challenges this year, but nowhere is that more clear than in the classroom.
March 13th was a Friday, the final day for in-person classes for last school year. That was one of the many signs that week that our lives were about to change, and with that, major changes for parents, students, and teachers. In mid-March, our world changed quickly. Some businesses locked the doors. Bars stopped pouring drinks. Many restaurants put the chairs on the tables. Barber shops, movie theaters closed. Case counts spiked. And since then, hundreds of thousands of people have died around the globe. Schools also closed. Many parents started working from home. On April 15th, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee recommended schools stay closed for the rest of the school year. But just weeks after that, school leaders locally started having conversations about going back to class.
We want to be prepared for the most challenging situation and just hope that the most challenging situation doesn't come.
Hamilton County put together a task force to come up with a plan. School districts across the country tried to find a way to move forward as lawmakers, including the president, pushed to get students back in school.
The Council of Economic Advisors estimates that 5.6 million parents will be unable to return to work if schools do not reopen this year. It's a tremendous problem. Schools have to open safely, but they have to open.
Many schools made plans to offer a mix of virtual and in-person classes. Parents, students, and teachers had to make choices that would impact their lives for months. Kelly Schimmel, a chorus teacher in Hamilton County, who, like so many people, has a medical condition that makes the risk of COVID-19 even more frightening, was facing a gut-wrenching decision.
If we aren't able to continue virtually, then my choice will have to be to step away from teaching, which I don't want to do. But it is way more important to keep my family safe and to keep other people safe.
School systems in the state had a range of plans. Most had in-person options, and since that first bell rang, some buildings have had to close temporarily for cleaning and contact tracing. The largest school system here locally, Hamilton County, offered 3 options: at home, virtual, or in-person classes that followed a multi-phase system based on the number of active cases. Hamilton County started out in phase 2, 2 in-person days. Right now, the county is in phase 3 with 5 days of in-person learning.
We're trying to make it feel as much normal as possible for our students.
So, where are we now? The U.S. has surpassed 200,000 deaths from the coronavirus, and all this in just 7 months. In Hamilton County, there are more than 9,000 cases, nearly 100 deaths since mid-March. Hundreds of students are considered to have been in close contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID-19.
We wanted to go right to the experts in our community to get their take on this back-to-school progress report. First up, Dr. Nakia Towns joins our panel. She's a deputy superintendent for Hamilton County Schools. She joined the district from the State Education Department in 2018. Next, Kendra Young. Kendra is the president of Hamilton County United, a local teacher and student advocacy group dedicated to supporting public education. She currently teaches 8th grade science at East Hamilton Middle School. Jennifer Bronson is a reentry task force coordinator with Hamilton County Schools. She helped the district formulate the plans for coming back to the classroom during the pandemic. Dr. David Aronoff comes to us from Tennessee's capital. He's Vanderbilt University Medical Center's director of the Infectious Diseases Division and our newsroom's go-to about all things COVID-19. Heather Montgomery is a Chattanooga native who's been in practice in pediatrics and family medicine since 2008. She's a mom of 4 and a recent COVID-19 survivor. Sarah Scott is an advocate with Family Voices of Tennessee. She's here to represent the sometimes forgotten community of families who have children with disabilities.
We are so excited to have some of our local community leaders, the people that are on the front lines in the fight against this pandemic and getting our kids back to school in whatever way that looks like. You're joining us tonight over Zoom. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. I want to get started right away with talking about what we're hearing from parents. And I want to go to Dr. Towns first. As far as parents, now that we've made it kind of to this milestone a few weeks in for school, what have been their biggest challenges that you guys are hearing as a school district?
Thanks for the question. I think for our parents, one of the biggest concerns is really just the well-being of their children. I mean, this whole situation that we're in has been so stressful for everyone, the disruption to school schedules for kids. How do you explain a pandemic to a 5-year-old? How do you make sure your high school student who may be missing the social interaction that they have with their friends or not getting the senior year that they expected? So as you can imagine, for our families, first and foremost in their mind is the well-being of their children and how do we support them with that. I think, on the heels of that, of course, is about their physical safety. Is it safe to go to school? Are we taking all the precautions that we outlined when we had the conversation over the summer, making sure that we're following our protocols in terms of the SAFE pledge with mask wearing and hand washing and staying home when you're sick and making sure that everybody else in the school is being as vigilant. And then I'll say finally, particularly when we think about all the instructional changes we've had to make to be able to accommodate parent options, the family learning options that we provided with both remote learning and in-person learning, and starting the school year with our Safe Start, Great Start with the hybrid learning configuration. I think parents have wanted to make sure that they are on top of all the systems that we have in place, and that if they're doing remote learning, virtual learning with HCS at home, that they're able to support their children to learn at high levels, and making sure that, frankly, that we're taking care of teachers and staff. I think our families are worried about our team and our people able to manage all that we're asking of them. So those are the kinds of things that we're hearing from in terms of our families.
And Dr. Towns, about how many, either percentage or number-wise, students do we have learning virtually, either with HCS at home or virtual school?
It's about 15,000 children, so about 30% of our district of 45,000 students. About 750 of those are at the virtual school, and then the rest of them are scattered among our 74 schools where they've chosen the HCS at home option.
And Kendra, I want to go to you next. You're an 8th grade science teacher at East Hamilton, and you're teaching both students at home and in the classroom throughout the same day. Tell us how that's going.
I was really excited about it when it first started because I like the challenge of doing both, and I still do. But I won't lie, it's extremely challenging, especially for teachers who struggle with the technology and the advancements anyway. We've had some issues with Wi-Fi stability. Of course, there was the day when all the schools went back and we crashed Google itself. Google Drive itself went down. So those types of challenges have been, we've overcame them, but it's been difficult. But it's been an interesting year.
And it's really just beginning, right?
Exactly.
I want to go to Sarah Scott now. She's an advocate for Tennessee Family Voices. Sarah, what are some of the challenges that the families that you deal with are facing? I know you work with a lot of families who have students with special needs. A a wide range of them. What are you hearing from them, and what have you heard these past few weeks?
A lot of people are just really overwhelmed. I think families don't realize how much support they get from outside entities until something like this happens, and they're left, completely alone. And the school decision has been, for some, choosing between structure and support, and risking their child's health, and weighing that out. It can be very difficult for some children. A lot of families are trying to facilitate learning while they're working at home. A lot of families have several children, and each child has different special needs. So that's really been challenging for folks to figure out how to, sort of receive the same intensity of learning while being at home is definitely a challenge.
And speaking of several kids, Heather Montgomery is joining us tonight, wearing several different hats. Heather, you're a mom of 4. You're also a nurse practitioner, and you have been through COVID and come out the other side, you and several of your children. How are you juggling all those things at one time, and how's it going for your family?
It's going. We get up every day, and we're just one day at a time. My 2 youngest are at Loftus Middle School in 7th and 8th grade, and then I have one at Chattanooga State who's working, and then one at Tennessee Tech. The 3 that were ill, we're still using the same precautions that we were before, since we don't know antibody levels or mutation of the strain. And one of my children does have pretty severe asthma. The other challenges are their father and I have jobs where we're not at home. He's a lieutenant for the police department downtown, and I work in a pediatric practice in Ottawa. And I'm kind of I say I'm the redheaded stepchild because I'm outside in a tent, but it's a fancy tent. We have heaven filters, and we have air conditioning, and if you had told me even last year that I would be practicing medicine in full PPE, swabbing kids for COVID, in the middle of a pandemic while trying to juggle parenthood, I would have laughed, but that's where we are. What I can say is that we've had a little while since kids have been back in school, and I definitely felt like we were going to have, at least initially, kind of a surge in case numbers, and we haven't seen that. I swab kids every day, and yes, we're still seeing it in children, but we're not seeing it any more than we were before. So as a parent, that makes me feel a little better that the schools, their structure and the things that they're doing to help and closing the schools and cleaning are helping. The biggest issues I see from my kids and from kids in my practice are juggling if they're transitioning back and forth. My daughter had to miss 3 days because she had to be COVID tested as a ragweed, but I couldn't take that chance that it wasn't something else. And so transitioning back and forth, parents that are working like myself, trying to make sure that their kids are getting the instruction that they need, getting the information they need from the schools, that is taxing at the end of the day.
Yeah, this juggling is an issue we've heard brought up so many times by parents. When we come back, we're going to talk more about our panel with that and how families are taking on this challenge.
One word we have heard a lot during this pandemic is unprecedented, but during it all, families have found a way to stay positive, stay engaged, and find ways to make it all work. Sabrina Maggiore shows us how.
When you ask students in our area what back to school was like this year, they're quick to sum it up.
Just different. It's like whole new different stuff.
Whether it's taking classes online or doing them in person in school buildings like this one, it's the students who know best what day-to-day learning actually looks like during this pandemic. For Ottawa Elementary School 5th grader Hudson Hensley, this new year has meant adapting to new rules and procedures during the school day.
My teachers keep saying stand 6 feet apart, and then they keep saying wear your mask, don't take it off, and use hand sanitizer and clean your table. That's my homework.
Hudson's mother Bonnie says she knows both students and teachers are still getting used to changes.
Getting ready for back to school, it was an adjustment for all of us, but it was like, this is the new norm, and we're just going to roll with it.
Bonnie says the in-person option was best for her son, but that sometimes thinking about social distancing in her son's classroom can be a bit nerve-wracking.
Is that a concern? Yes. Yes, because there is no way. Now, I have not seen it, but I cannot imagine how do you separate 27 kids.
12 tables.
Right. 12 tables. They're doing the best they can.
For nearly 15,000 Hamilton County families, back to school this year means classes are online only. Brandy Hewitt says she knows this was best for her family, but that this wasn't an easy choice.
Considering I had parents in their 70s, I had other members of my family who have immune disorders, so I just thought that it might be nice to wait the first semester that they're allowing us to do and then go from there.
But Hewitt's son Otis says this semester he struggled with some of the added distractions that come with online learning.
Maybe your dog is barking, or your internet is acting up. A lot more problems than in person.
Otis also says sometimes there are days when being away from his peers is really hard.
I miss being able to get to talk to my teachers alone, and being able to talk to my friends and have lunch with friends and classmates.
Cleveland High School senior Anna Ingram says this year she's just grateful to be getting a final year at the school where she's made so many memories.
After Corona and last year having to go online, I was scared I wasn't going to have a senior year at all. I thought I was going to spend my senior year of high school in my bed looking at my computer, looking at my teacher through a screen.
Walking new paths both literally and figuratively as students in our area adjust to learning amid the pandemic. Sabrina Maggiore, News Channel 9.
Seeing changes not only at home and in the world around you, but also at your child's school is hard. And it's something that many parents are dealing with every day. We want to go to our panel now and talk about that. Jennifer, you are with the Hamilton County Schools Reopening Task Force and helped develop this plan. Talk about the thought process that went into how students would take on learning remotely when necessary and then going back to school if that's what their parents chose for them to do, that change between one and the other.
Absolutely. As you know, the School Reopening Task Force, we spent the greater part of the summer coming together. We had representatives from every stakeholder group, parents, we had teachers, building leaders, district leaders, and medical professionals, of course, represented on that task force. And we spent a lot of time carving out options for our families to decide what would really be the best for their family, given concerns around, as have already been mentioned, around health and safety for both students and staff. And then as far as the protocols, we consulted with a lot of medical experts, both local and state level experts, to set up our gating criteria to determine when we would move through the phases. And then we're really relying on state guidance that was jointly formed with the Tennessee Department of Health and Department of Ed as far as when we are keeping a school open or closing that school in the event that we have a positive case.
Dr. David Aronoff is joining us tonight from Vanderbilt University, the infectious disease department there at the medical center. Dr. Aronoff, can you talk to us about the spread in schools and what we're seeing right now about the spread among young children and how maybe mask wearing has been effective in fighting that?
Yeah, I mean, what we've learned a lot through the pandemic is that pretty much any human being who hasn't already been infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus is susceptible. And whether somebody's a child or a fully grown adult, if they haven't been infected, they can get infected. We still don't fully understand why children are less likely to develop symptoms than adults or less likely to get severely ill, although they can get sick and they can require hospitalization. They tend not to, but we've certainly learned that they can pass the virus to others, and that includes other adults or even other children in their school. And so the same principles that we've been using when we go to work as adults or when we're out and about in town hold true in school. And that means trying the best that we can to create distance between one another, wearing face coverings when possible to reduce the likelihood that our breath extends in a cloud around us and less likely to be contagious, and making sure that our hands are clean and commonly touched surfaces are disinfected. People are doing a good job of staying home when they're not well, but this is a pandemic that has managed to spread through silent transmission events from people who have no idea that they're sick. And so it's great that we're doing screening and that we're keeping people home who are sick, but we really need to stay vigilant, even with our little ones, because the virus can spread without really telling us that it's doing so.
And Kendra, you are in a classroom every day. I know you teach middle schoolers. How is mask wearing going for your kids? I know as a parent, a lot of us wondered, will my kid wear a mask when they go back to school, especially for parents like me of really young children. I know some of your counterparts, I know you've talked to them about that. How is mask wearing going just overall with our students?
It has honestly gone surprisingly well, even with talking with teachers of very young students all the way up. Kids have done such a fantastic job with this, much better than some adults. They have they've embraced it. We talked in science at the very beginning of the year, and I've expressed this before, that, on the first day when we entered in like the phase 2 mode, I really came in ready for the debate that had, erupted in the community and in the nation. I expected my classroom to mirror that, and it absolutely did not. It was complete opposite. But when we moved into phase 3, I thought, okay, with the room full, let's talk about this. And so we talked about it through the lens of, we can't eliminate the risk. There's going to be risk, but we can reduce the risk. We can make that risk more manageable. And the kids have been fantastic. They were looking out for me today when I passed out Post-it notes. And how was I going to pick up Post-it notes and not put myself at an unsafe level of risk? They were concerned about me. So they're looking at everything through that lens of, it's not going to be risk-free, but let's reduce it as much as possible. And they've done a fantastic job with the masks even.
And we know there are students who, for sensory issues or other health issues, cannot wear a mask or have a hard time wearing a mask. Sarah, I'm sure you've spoken to a lot of families for whom that is the case. What are their concerns?
Yes, some children just are not going to tolerate that, depending upon their disability or their behavior. For some people, it's actually a risk if you have a condition in which you can't remove it yourself, or if you have some breathing issues. So it's required a lot of creativity, I think, of staff and families. But I hear the same, that it's going remarkably well, that people are very tolerant of everyone's needs.
Here's a quick survival guide for learning at home. Make a space, make sure it's quiet, comfortable, and set aside for the sole purpose of learning. No lying in bed. Avoid letting your children use the same space where they play video games or watch television. Set a routine. Kids need structure. Get up, get dressed, go to school even though school is at home. Digital quarantine. Remove other screen options. This is necessary so schoolwork gets your child's undivided attention. Also, digital recess. Breaks are so important. Young eyes need rest. Young lungs need fresh air. Young muscles really need stretching, and all these suggestions come from childrenandscreens.com. You can hit that link on our websites for more.
And still to come in this special broadcast tonight, what do you do when policies from the federal, state, and local level contradict each other? How guidance from lawmakers affect what's happening in the classroom? That story coming up after the break. One big struggle for leaders and policymakers is balancing education and health. Chattanooga Mayor Andy Burke commented on the importance of sending kids to school. He says it's up to everyone to do their part to make sure children get the best education possible.
One of the most important things we can do is send our kids to school and let them go in person, because that's how they're going to learn the best. And because we're not making other kinds of sacrifices, we're making it harder on our schools.
And sometimes it's hard to believe we are more than 7 months into this pandemic. During that time, we've had differing guidance on how best to move forward with back to school from federal, state, and local leaders. Jessica Harthorn breaks down how the suggestions got us here.
Sending kids back to in-person learning has not been an easy decision for parents to make. We've heard recommendations from federal and state governments as well as health experts, some being controversial, others contradictory.
According to a report from the American Academy of Pediatrics, Tennessee led the nation in COVID-19 cases among children under the age of 18 by the end of July. However, the AAP also says the benefits of kids returning to in-person learning outweighs the risk. President Trump and Tennessee Governor Bill Lee both push for students to be back in classrooms this fall.
Fortunately, the data shows that children are lower risk. Children obviously have a very strong immune system.
And the state's health commissioner, Dr. Lisa Piercy, believes children attending class should be safe. She says children typically do not need to be hospitalized and that pediatric COVID-19 deaths are rare.
And all of you, like me, that have children that have been in school know that this has been a struggle. Our kids that are normally happy-go-lucky and really interactive and social have really missed their friends. They've really missed their teachers, and they've gone through a grief process too.
Catherine Vaughn is a Tennessee teacher. On Twitter, she says face-to-face class comes at a cost, not just for students, but teachers too, especially if they have to quarantine and run through their sick and personal days.
That hotspot map that the health department puts up, and I see where the hotspots are, and I know that there are, students that are going to attend the school that live in those hotspots. What does that mean?
Recently, the Trump administration deemed educators as critical infrastructure workers, a move likely done to keep schools open because critical workers may continue working even after COVID-19 exposure, so long as they're not showing symptoms. Governor Lee is now allowing each district to make the choice. Dr. Amy Bono from the Protect My Care group calls that insane and an irresponsible policy.
To leadership at all levels, I say, there are no shortcuts. Teachers, just like doctors, can't do our job until state leadership does theirs.
Bradley County decided to make teachers essential workers, while Hamilton County decided against it.
Do we believe that we are essential in the sense of education is foundational? Yes. Do we think that we are essential and that our lives and the lives of students should be put at risk? No.
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp is also considering declaring teachers as critical infrastructure workers. The Professional Association of Georgia Educators issued a response saying teachers should be able to decide whether they want to return to work if the governor goes through with this plan. The group also says that districts should provide paid leave and let high-risk employees stay home. Jessica Harthorn, News Channel 9.
How do you know what to follow when the rules seem to be different? It's something we're all struggling with right now. I want to go to our panel and talk about when the guidance changes. Should school rules change? Have they changed since we went back into school? Dr. Towns, I want to tag you first on this. Have we seen any shifts in the plan or just in how you guys are handling things from the start of the school year to now because of those changing policies or changing guidance?
So I think that one of the things we try to convey to the community is that we are learning. Just as the medical profession is learning about COVID-19, I think even the doctors would say we know a lot more about it today than we knew in March, as well as for us, our continuous learning plan is an evolving document. We've literally been updating it as we've gotten better guidance. I would say, fundamentally, the things that we have been consistent on and we will continue to make sure that we lean into is our safe pledge around the wearing the face coverings and hand washing and physical distancing. But one of the things recently that we made an adjustment around was the guidance around close contacts. The guidance had been 10 minutes, being within 6 feet for longer than 10 minutes. We got an update that said that the health department was going to start following within 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes. So we had to communicate that. And we do have very robust communication protocols where we, at the beginning of the school year, we were sending a daily update to staff and community via email. We have about 40,000 folks on our email listserv. Now we're doing that twice weekly. And we use that to try to make sure we're telling people when these changes occur so that they know that we've made a change. And of course, we're heavily on social media, trying to make sure that we communicate on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter pages so that folks know what's going on. But I would say largely what we're doing is making sure that folks know we're learning as we go. We're creating, protocols and trying to be consistent in what we are creating as we experience new scenarios. I'll be frank, there are things that we didn't expect that we are going to have to deal with that have come up as we've gone through the school year. So we've had to be very nimble as a leadership team, but we've tried to make sure that we stay very informative with our parents and communicate frequently about what's happening.
In Hamilton County and in many schools across the state, they are playing football right now. And a lot of parents are watching these games and thinking, how can you have close contact on the field and that be okay? Yet when my child is in a classroom, they're asked to stay as far apart as possible. Talk to us about the science behind that.
So it's clear from modeling the way this virus has spread in communities that being outside is safer than being inside. When it comes to contact sports, it's important to understand that it's really hard to remove the risk. There is increased risk when people are tackling each other or standing on a line right across from each other. The NFL has the luxury of being able to test a whole lot very, very frequently and to create these bubbles that are harder to create in college and even harder to create in high school. So we do the best that we can by making sure that people stay home when they're not well, that on the sidelines, people are doing the things that need to be done to limit the risk of disease transmission. I think all things considered, if two people are standing across from each other outside versus inside, outside is a lower risk situation.
Dr. Towns, I know we've had at least one outbreak, maybe more on our Hamilton County football teams. How has that gone? How has that kind of progressed to the school building then? And do you understand parents who have that kind of conflicting idea about why is it okay to play football, but I can't have my kids sitting, right next to somebody in a classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that we grapple with all the time. I mean, Jim Bronson knows we were just having a conversation today about which activities are within our risk tolerance, right? And which activities are not. With regard to, football and athletics, I think think, part of it is that we serve a community where there are many parents who are very interested in their children being able to participate in those activities, and they have advocated for their children to participate, and it's optional. And so to the extent that, as the doctor was saying, they understand the risk and that we can only do so much in terms of the school district with regard to mitigating those risks of the contact sports. I think, families are making decisions that they think are best for their individual circumstances. The TSSAA is the organizing body that has given quite a bit of guidance around what to do. And one of the things that's a result of that is that if we've had a student on any of our sports teams that tests positive for COVID-19, the entire team is being quarantined. And so that has happened. And what ends up occurring in that situation is that the team ends up not being able to participate in a scheduled game. If everybody's having to quarantine for 14 days, within that 14-day period, there is typically a game, a competition that they're not being able to participate in. So it's interrupting the season, but we are then making sure that we're doing the close contact, tracing within the building. And that's really, our key strategy here is that, as we've talked about, there is going to be COVID-19. It's in the community. So we know that there are going to be cases that occur in our school community because we're just a microcosm of the larger, area that we're living in. And so our strategy is that we immediately are able to identify, contact, trace, and quarantine to keep students out of the building, because as a school district, we don't want to contribute to community spread. And that's what we are really trying to make sure that we maintain. So we've done the same thing with our sports teams, that we aggressively, contact trace, keep the rosters, and quarantine the entire team, because they have indeed been participating in a higher risk activity when you have those contact sports without face masks. Even though they are outside, we take the extra precaution of the entire, team has to quarantine if there's been exposure.
It is certainly a football season no one could have expected, and a school year no one could have expected as well. And some of the people that deserve the most praise in this are teachers. When we come back, we're going to look at how some of our teachers are adapting creatively.
During the pandemic, teachers have jumped right into the new challenge, keeping kids safe while teaching them. Well, this segment shows us how they are adapting.
Hey everyone, it's Miss Kate.
Teachers are doing what they've always done.
Did you get me?
Pulling out all the stops to keep kids educated and engaged. Teaching future chefs, mathematicians, and artists.
And if I don't love how it looks, that's okay. We're going to go with it.
All from a distance or in a classroom with a pandemic-minded makeover.
My responsibility as a teacher right now is to welcome my kids with open arms and to get ready to teach them because we have missed so many months of learning.
Now I can see that we're spacing apart.
Lakeview Fort Oglethorpe started the school year on a high note, literally.
Please stay 6 feet away.
LFO's 6 Feet single is a big hit in North Georgia and around the globe.
I have a group of 8 male teachers, most of them coaches, singing a cappella to Backstreet Boys. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute, this is actually decent.
Here at LFO, we've always been really good at adapting and doing what we need to do.
On top of that, educators need more school supplies than ever. Masks, hand sanitizer, and more. And for one educator, toilet paper.
We're going to be exercising on some toilet paper.
Hickson Elementary coach Aaron Wood learned to roll with home workouts.
I try to get that energy level up for all my kiddos.
See, I'm keeping my distance. There we go.
Coach Wood's kid-friendly exercises have hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube.
The most important thing is I want them to learn something. I want them to exercise. But most importantly, I want them to have fun.
While classes look different,
It's a work in progress.
the lessons stay the same.
When you look at what's going on in the world, how can you not be in fear? But I also know that I have a job to do, and I am definitely going to do it.
For News Channel 9, I'm Bliss Seckman.
We hear so much about how hard teachers are working in the classroom, late into the night, even outside of the classroom, to make sure that these changing circumstances don't affect our children in a negative way. Kendra, talk to me about some of the examples you've seen about teachers going above and beyond and just hitting it out of the ballpark in these unprecedented times.
It's 24/7. We are there's constant emails, messages, Remind app. I know Class Dojo goes a lot. Constant contact with parents, families. I've been messaging with students on my couch at 10 o'clock at night because that's when they do their homework in middle school, is 10 o'clock at night. So that's when I'm answering questions. I typically, even right now, I have my whiteboards and things ready to go, my dry erase markers. I'm recording a lesson as soon as this interview is over. So for tomorrow. So it's always, it's like double prep because you've got the lesson ready to go in the classroom tomorrow. And then I also have to be ready with pre-recorded lessons, videos, and animations and things like that for my at-home students, because what if my Wi-Fi doesn't work tomorrow? What if Zoom doesn't connect tomorrow? I can't just have that student out in limbo, unable to access their learning. I have to be able to provide that. And so you're doing everything 2-3 times in order to make sure that you're meeting the needs. And it's really highlighted, just like COVID has with everything else, COVID has highlighted inequities across the board, whether it's poverty, single parent homes, no matter what, access to health care, whatever the situation. And so with teachers, the thing that it highlighted for us, the situation already existed before, which was lack of appropriate planning time and not having enough time to prepare our lessons and grade and do all the other things that we need to do. Well, COVID came along and blew that up 1,000 times. So it's been a challenge. The recent decision by the school board and the district to add in the additional days that they added in, the 6 days, that went so far for relieving teacher stress and teacher anxiety, just a kind of a chance to catch our breath a little bit. And for students too, we see the strain on students as they're trying to juggle all of this in 2 different scenarios, bouncing back and forth. It was a relief for them as well.
Is this sustainable, Kendra, for teachers? And will they be burnt out?
Prior to that decision that I just mentioned by the board, I honestly didn't think that it would be. You try to be positive about it and be like, well, I don't know, things are strange. I honestly didn't know how much longer it was going to go on prior to that decision. And as we ramp up into the winter months and as things keep trudging along, I can't say for sure, obviously I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know the relief that teachers felt after that decision was palpable in the hallways, on social media, and just the groups and stuff that we communicate with each other. The relief, you could touch it, you could feel it. It was a huge sigh of relief among teachers that, okay, we can do this. We're going to make it through. We're going to survive. We're going to make it through this. That decision went a long way.
Heather, I want to ask you as a mom, is it sustainable for families? When do we reach our breaking point?
And Kendra kind of pinpointed on some of the things that I see every day in my office. Parents that are struggling to help their kids due to technology limitations. Granted, we have seen the EPB step forward to help with that. But I have patients that they don't even really have access to email regularly or a phone regularly. And granted, the school system has done a great job. I mean, I get text messages, I get phone calls, I get emails. My husband gets them. Sometimes I get them in Spanish. They've done a great job in communicating, but the disparities are there. And for those kids are the ones that I'm really concerned about. My son has some sensory processing issues. He has some severe ADD and anxiety. I have seen him and kids that, usually have an IEP that are in school, that they have the extra help there that due to other reasons are at home for their safety. I see those kids kind of falling behind simply because just the extra support's not there. As a parent, I have definitely, the stress in my children is is you can just see it on their little faces when they come home. And, we kind of related to football. My son is playing football. Yes, he had coronavirus. Yes, he technically should be protected. But at some points, mental health has to win out. And I was very happy to see the days given to the teachers and give those and the children as well, because mental health has to be part of this. We can go on and on and on about physical health, but in the medical field, we know that depression and anxiety have real physical manifestations. And if we don't look at the mental health aspect of it, we can't sustain this. As parents, as administrators, as teachers, as a community, we can.
When we come back, we're going to ask our panelists to grade our back to school so far in our progress report.
If you want your child to thrive in learning at home, here's what you can do. Schedule flexibility. Here are a couple of ideas from edutopia.com. If your child is a self-starter and can handle independence, go with it. As long as learning gets done, let them practice grown-up living by being in charge of their day. Safe space. Many children who are introverted and also shy love working from home. For these kids, home represents a refuge from the anxiety of being constantly in the presence of others. Kids who are distracted easily or who may be targeted by bullies also report better learning at home. Digital Learning Pledge. We found this one at commonsense.org. This digital learning pledge is like a contract for younger kids. It lays out expectations for both the student and also the parent to prevent misunderstandings down the road. You can also find links from Edutopia and also commonsense.com at our websites.
When you go to school, you get a report card, a progress report, a grade that you get to take home to talk about how well you're doing so far. We want to ask our panelists tonight, what is your grade for back to school so far? We've reached this week milestone now that we're in, so how would you rate it? Dr. Towns, I want to start with you.
So I think about grading, and typically there's like a clear rubric or like the answer key that you can like score against. And here's what we're dealing with in a pandemic. There's no rubric, there's no answer sheet that we can go by. And so I have to say it's like in my college engineering courses, we're grading on a curve. And given the fact that we've never done this before, I think that the work of our teachers, our school leaders, our families has really been phenomenal. And the fact that we've gotten into now what is the 6th week of school, making all these adjustments and being able to have in-person learning for our kids, I think is a testament to all the great work and dedication and commitment. So for me, I'm grading an A-. It would be an A+, but I just don't have an answer key to go by. So A- for all the effort that our community, our school community has been doing.
Sarah, I want to go to you. I know you deal with a lot of families across a lot of different circumstances. How would you grade the back to school process so far?
Back to school process for me would get probably a C, and maybe even less for people with more significant needs. I do see the amount of effort that has gone into the planning. I do see the amount of creativity. And while those things are great, for some students that just isn't enough. They're just being left by the wayside.
Kendra, I want to go to you next. You're used to giving grades, so this would be a pretty easy one for you. You just sent those progress reports home this week, right? So what's your grade for back to school?
So as I was thinking about the question, I'm building the rubric in my head. So communication, adaptability, creativity, and then reaching, our students who are high need. And this is such a really hard question for me. I'm going to go with an extremely high B+, possibly and even an A. And that really what is pushing me towards that is I know that I don't want to negate that there are still things that the district needs to improve on. We need to improve, our technology and our ability to reach students who need it and our ability to pivot on a dime. I mean, we're doing it, but we can always do it better. But I can't we've adapted to everything that's been thrown at us so far. You know, for better or for worse, we're adapting with every step we take. And I don't want to in any way take away from that for what teachers and families and school leaders are doing. We're watching them adapt, and that's what we have to do, is adapt. And I think they're doing a very good job of that.
Dr. Aronoff, this is a little bit out of your wheelhouse. I know you're maybe used to writing prescriptions instead of report cards, but what would you give schools and even across the state? You know, there are so many more students that are affected besides just the ones in Hamilton County. What are your thoughts there?
I was muted. My first day on Zoom, apparently.
Zoom failed.
Right. But, you know, I have to say that as a healthcare professional and somebody in infectious diseases, even I was unprepared for the pandemic of COVID-19. And I think our field has really had to be on our heels somewhat dealing with this. I look at our school system and on the very thin resources on which it has to operate. And I think about the weight of a pandemic weighing down on our school system, and I have not met a teacher or a parent who is not completely dedicated to the safety and well-being of themselves, their family, their students, and their community, and really looking around for every resource they can possibly deploy to maximize safety and reduce the likelihood that people get sick, while recognizing the importance of bringing students back into the classroom. So that's a very long way of saying that I'm really motivated by what I'm seeing, and I would grade an A. Granted, I'm not a teacher, so please take that with a grain of salt.
Jennifer, you've been working so closely with the reopening plan, and you know how it's going behind the scenes. What would you give on that progress report?
Yeah, I think I would lean towards a B+. For on the one hand, you have the points that Kendra and Sarah made. There's still work to be done, but on the other hand, I'm just so impressed by kids and teachers, kids for their ability to adapt and just adjust on the fly. You know, they're just so resilient, and then teachers embracing the opportunity to be creative and teach in a way that they haven't ever taught before has just really been so encouraging during this time. So a solid B+.
And Heather, I know that you're a mom of 4. You've received a lot of report cards. And you have such a unique perspective here coming from both the medical field and a parent. What is your grade for the school district so far?
So I've kind of gone back and forth over this, over the last bit. I think that this is something we've never done before. Truthfully, as a healthcare provider, I would have bet money on that by October 1, we would all been at home. I really did. And so I've been pleasantly surprised in that aspect, that the schools have done a really good job. These kids are wearing their masks, they're staying apart from each other. I mean, I watch every morning a bunch of, smart mouth little middle schoolers that get out of their cars and, greet each other from a distance with their masks on, and they're doing what we ask. Our teachers, in spite of everything, are still just, supporting our kids in every way. My biggest issue, like I said, has been with the kids that, the single parents that can't be with their kids, the kids that are on IEP, that are special needs, that probably do need to be in school, but they're at home and they're not getting that extra help. As a parent, the first few weeks were very overwhelming because of all the new technology platforms. A lot of it was just kind of dumped on us. I know that those were necessary. It would have been really great to have a cheat sheet about, a week before to kind of look at the 13 apps that my kids were given the first day of class and expected to use. So, there are definitely challenges that we're seeing. But overall, I think that considering we've never done this before, and across the nation that we really were kind of one of the ones that went back on time and, didn't delay school and went back full time, I would give us a solid B.
Now we're here with Latricia here, and she had a chance to ask a lot of questions over the last hour, but let's ask you a question. You're a mom. You've been through this process for several months now. What are your thoughts on the challenges of teaching your kids at home?
It's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I have 3 kids, 2 that are school age.
Right.
My husband works from home, so he took on the bulk of that. And my daughter is in 2nd grade and has special needs. And there were nights we were working on that work until 7 or 8 at night. And we have support. You know, I worry about the families that don't. I think that those families that don't have a grandparent or, you know, a good support system, what is this year going to be like for them? And how long are we going to be in it? We don't know.
Yep.
It's the unknown that's hard, but teachers are trying, the school system's trying.
It's the unknown, and it's also the ever-changing thing, right? Which school is closed, the status with substitutes, the status with custodians, so many things that we are continuing to watch change.
More progress to be made, but certainly some progress that has been completed already.
No doubt about that, and thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate that.
You can find this entire show on our website, NewsChannel9.com.